Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey Live. I'm Natalie Fairchild, and this
You
is
got it the
Martin.
other
No,
way.
I switched my camera.
Morning.
Anyway, morning. How is everyone? It's almost Christmas time. This is our last podcast of our first year of doing this. So we
Not
started in
bad.
April. Not bad, not bad at all. And we've got a great topic. So I'm excited to get into this because basically how we come up with content, Martin, is I go through
How do
stuff
we how do we do that?
and then we go, oh yeah, we need to talk about what I'm going through right now. That's basically how we do our content.
That's because you're
so
an active entrepreneur, so it
so
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, you're living and breathing my life. So we kind of, the Paralysis show, which you can kind of take us through, but one of the topic or titles for the topic was going to be I hit my goal, now I'm terrified. So, but we changed it a little bit. So, tell us about what we're talking about, Martin, and help us off the cliff.
Help us off the cliff. Well, this is actually one of my favorite topics because I've seen it enough, right? I've been doing this type of work for about 21, 22 years now. And there's always this moment. And, I don't know if that's the official name. Actually, I'm going to give that disclosure, is what I've always called it. Okay.
Success
I've
paralysis
always
versus
called it success paralysis. And it's this weird moment that happens when an entrepreneur or somebody who's working hard at something
mhm,
hits a milestone or a goal. There's this natural inclination to celebrate that and then to slow down a little bit. And there's a little bit of downtime, and that's normal.
mhm,
But then the inability to come out of the downtime
mhm,
because of fear, because of like straight
mhm,
paralysis, because of like whatever things your brain is throwing at you
mhm, mhm.
right after having accomplished something that you've been working at for a while.
Yeah,
That is what we're going to be talking about today.
yeah.
We're going to be
And people
talking about,
say, go ahead.
no, we're just going to say, we're going to talk about, you know, what is it? How do you get there? Why is it happening from the brain standpoint? And we're going to talk about how to get out of it,
Perfect. Perfect.
how to
Because we as
prevent it too. You can prevent it
yeah,
too, just like
exactly.
forest fires.
Let's talk about that. And people do say that, right when you hit the shit storm, usually there's something great just around, like you're just about to get there. And that's kind of what happened to me a little bit too. Um, as we awarded our first franchise just before that. But anyway, let's roll with it. By the way, your camera is animated with you this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Following me. It's
"Woo."
following me now.
All right. So, let's get started.
Okay. So why don't you give us a little bit of what happened to you?
Okay, yeah. We talked about this when we had, a technical issue and Shannon Hernandez couldn't join us.
Hmm.
So, we just vulnerably talked about what I had gone through Friday before Labor Day weekend. So putting the franchise together, Pacific Perks Franchising, has been a lot of work. It's been a dream for 16 years. It's been active for 2 years putting it together. Then you have a little personal blip in life, and sometimes that slows your process down a little more. So I'm ramped up, getting going, and we thought we were ready to award our first franchise. And just love this person. I'm still in contact with her. I hope she's part of my life, long term. And you never know what can happen.
Right.
But it didn't end up working out or a good win for her, and that was just so devastating for me.
Right.
And it felt like, and of course, I was graceful. I understand it. It has to be a win-win, so I got that reality of it and that perception. But
Yep.
then you stand back and you go into yourself and you're like, is this ever going to happen? Like, you know, I started I started blaming my ex, um, I
Anything
I
and
was going
everything. Right.
deep. I was
Yes.
going deep. I was pulling out stuff from
Right.
left field. So, yeah, so that was a really, really tough moment. And then you and I met on a Tuesday after Labor Day, and you tried to get out of the meeting, and I said, "No, I need you." And and you helped me through it, and you said it's tough, but the only way to get through it is to take action. And I was like, "All right, shit. I'm getting off. Let's just cut the meeting short. If I got to take action, I got to get it done and then I got to go in my cave." And we just awarded 2 territories to Elaine Evans in the Phoenix East Valley area, and that was the phone call I made right after we got off that phone call.
Right. So, and I think that to make the distinction of the two things we're going to talk about is, you know, there was a bad outcome, if you will, or something unexpected that did not go your way,
Yeah, didn't
and
go my way. Mhm.
you needed a push to keep moving, which is fairly normal, right? Everyone goes through that one. But then fast forward, right? That call initiated this whole other chain of events that culminated into you actually awarding your first two franchises, like in one single swoop. Uh, and what happened right after that? Right after awarding those two franchises is what we're going to be talking about today.
What did happen?
What happened was you came to me saying that you
Oh,
were
right.
not moving forward. You were not wanting to do the all of the things that come with having awarded two franchises, right? There was a moment of
Oh shit. There was an oh
yeah.
shit
There
moment.
was like a oh shit, what do I do now? How do I do it? Like there was all of this
A lot of anxiety.
conversation and anxiety around
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
happens now,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
if Elaine's listening, we got you. You know, this is just normal behavior and I got this guy in my pocket. But
the team's
yeah,
got you too.
yeah, right. Exactly. But yeah, it was kind of like for me it was like, okay, the real work starts now. We've been preparing for years
Right.
and now we get to see how good we have it together and where the holes are. And we know there's going to be holes.
Oh yeah.
And so that's good knowing that, you know, going in, but it was just like, oh God, here we go. You know, yeah, it was like an oh shit moment.
Right. And that's what we're talking about today. So what why does that happen? What was going through your mind in the oh shit moment?
Total imposter syndrome. Can I
Okay.
do this? Do we have enough ready? Are we ready for this? Are we, you know, going to be successful? I mean, that's my number one thing is
Yep.
making sure that it's a success for the person that has invested into our brand
Yep.
and trusts us. There's responsibility. There's another level of responsibility.
Exactly. And I think I tell you this all the time. Um, our brains are pretty simple machines.
Yeah.
They're they do complex things, but they're simple
Mhm.
machines, right? So
Mhm.
I always give people this example, right? So what does your car do,
It drives.
right? So it drives you from place to place, right? It transport things.
Yeah.
Can you explain how does it do it?
No, I don't know how planes work. I don't know how fax machines work. If that's where
Right.
you're getting.
It's it's not in the it's not in your job description to know, right? But that's kind of how your brain works, right? It's a very simple machine that does very complex things, but it's very 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 simple. It has a couple of main jobs, right? It has the job of all the automatic shit that's happening in your body. We're not going to talk about that today,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
has the job to protect you from risk.
Right. Right. That asshole, I call it the asshole in your head.
And the reason you end up doing that is because there's all these things you want to do, right? There's all these things that you've discovered and assigned to yourself as things you want to accomplish in life. And then once it comes down to it, you realize that whatever the brain is telling you usually is not a cheerleading section to do those things that you want to do. It's usually a little bit of the opposite. It's usually telling you, hey, just slow down, or maybe you're not cut out for this. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily encouraging. And the reason for it is because to discourage you is the easiest way to prevent you from taking another risk and another risk and another risk and another risk that ultimately take you to the places you want to go.
So it's
So,
managing that voice in your head.
well, we'll
And no,
we'll talk about how you fix that in
yeah,
a
okay.
second. But but the bottom line is that what happens right after you get one of those moments, right? One of those wins. You lock one in. You sell that one thing that you've been talking about selling for a long time.
Mhm,
You
mm,
get that one client that you were after for a year. Like something happens that is milestone level for your brain. What happened was you just, you know, didn't fall down a cliff. You just dodged a bullet. You just, did not get hit by a car. Like it's almost like you just avoided a huge downfall that it was trying to prevent you from taking. It was trying to prevent you from doing that one thing that you just did. So, I don't know if something like that's ever happened to you, but I almost fall off a roof one time. And right after it happened, that moment where you're just like at the
oh,
edge of the damn thing and you almost died.
yeah. Christmas lights?
Well, no, it's not that recent. Trust me, I wouldn't get up there. It's a long, long time ago. But right after that happened, right, I had prevented myself from getting injured. I had prevented myself from falling. But right after, I couldn't move
Mm.
for a good long while.
Thus, the paralysis in the
Hence the
title.
paralysis moment, right?
Mhm.
The fact that the brain was hijacking all of my other functions, basically saying, I think you're just going to stay right here and not move anymore for a
And
good long while.
how long did that stay
Well, I
like
mean,
that?
luckily there were other people who helped me sort of like
Yeah.
get down from the place. But if there hadn't been, I probably would have been there for a good half an hour.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It was like I had no intention of moving. It was just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
So what's happening in your body is a little similar. What's happening in your brain is a little similar to that. Right after you went and did that one thing that your
Mhm.
brain has been working hard at preventing you from doing it. You have to
Mhm.
understand, right? If I ask you what your toaster does, your toaster toasts bread, right?
Mhm.
And that's all it does, but it's a complex mechanism that makes it all happen. But your toaster doesn't understand its own complex mechanism. It just toasts bread, right? So your brain doesn't really understand the little differences between not falling down a cliff and closing your first client. Like the
Mhm.
feelings are the same, the situations are the same. So the cascade of chemicals that get released for those from those two things are not that dissimilar.
And those
So the fear
chemicals
you're
that
feeling is real.
yeah, and those chemicals that get released are what makes me emotionally exhausted.
Sure.
And I have said I'm emotionally exhausted for a lot of my life, and so I've really been working on dealing with things in a way that doesn't release all of those hormones, and I
Yep.
become emotionally exhausted. This
Well,
wasn't one of them, but
I have good news and bad news for you.
damn it.
The bad news is that it'll never stop. It'll
Right.
continue till the day you die, right? It'll never stop doing it that way. Okay. The good news is that there's a lot you can do to minimize the effect of those things. There's a
Mhm.
lot you can do
Mhm.
to minimize how they hit you. And we're going to talk about some of that. But before we go there, I just want to sort of wrap up the concept. So what you're experiencing right after having closed the deal, right after having accomplished the thing that you've been working towards, is your brain trying to go, hey, nice save, right? Good on you for not failing at that one thing that I was pretty certain you were gonna fail at. A good job at not failing. But let's just not do that again. Right? Let's not put ourselves through that again. Right? And again, like I make the brain sound like it is some villain in your head, but it's not. Like it's actually trying to keep you alive, right? And it does not know the difference between the fear that it gives you to speak in public and the fear that a guy with a gun would give you. It's like in your brain, those two things
Crazy.
are not really that dissimilar, right? So the effect of those two things is pretty similar. So when you just accomplished it, brain goes like, yeah, nice, good for you. Let's not go there again. Right? And what you experience is that period of like complete disinterest in jumping back on to what you thought was going to be a moment of elation. You
Right.
thought it was going to be like this celebration, this momentum generating thing that just carries you forward, right?
That's
So
what
that
happened to me, for sure.
it
I'm like,
adds a
"Why am
layer.
I not
What am I not happier that this just went
jumping?"
down, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
And and also what happens is that lack of elation, that moment of like, why am I not happier? It just compounds on the feeling of like maybe there's something wrong, right? Or maybe something wrong is coming, or maybe something wrong is going to show up now. Like what the other shoe
Yeah,
to drop sort of like feeling, right?
yeah,
Like it's a
yeah.
good thing that just happened. I wonder what the bad thing to counterbalance is coming my way. Right. So
Yeah, that's another one for people too. That can be a
we're
real pattern.
yeah, we're complex little animals, and we
Mhm,
give ourselves a lot of ideas too. And
mhm.
and that's one of them, right? That you start thinking about instead of now thinking about all the things you have to do, which is a potential place to go, you start thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And
Oh, yeah,
that
that
also
I'm so good at that one.
that's
You
called
know
catastrophizing, right? And
yeah, I go to the future and I'm under a bridge sleeping in a tent,
yep.
for sure. And
Um, it's so funny because sometimes I do this. I don't know. It's an exercise or a practice with people where I go when they're afraid about something, right? They're concerned about something, and I go, okay, well, let's just stretch that timeline as far as we can go. Let's just go. So this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and I'm going to lose this, and I'm going to lose that. Everybody ends under a bridge.
really?
That's not original. Everybody ends up homeless under a bridge.
Oh
Okay,
god.
and it's just I don't know why we have you know such a terrifying relationship with that, but that's basically where people take this, right? They go all the way to like I'm homeless under a bridge if
Yeah,
I don't sell this
interesting.
thing, if I don't create a good pricing structure, if I don't
Yeah,
handle this employee issue, like
yeah,
whatever problem it is, you can stretch it
right.
out to they're homeless under a bridge, which is I find it curious.
And then sometimes I will go to the extreme other way to just be like, "Nat, if you don't do anything else in your life, you've done enough."
Right. And that's part of the side of how do we solve this. And that's part of the how do we get better at this thing.
So knowing that this is potentially gonna happen, you're
Mhm.
gonna hit a goal, and you're gonna be like, "I lost 50 pounds, why don't I feel so amazing?"
Right.
After I lost the first 5, I thought I was strutting around and, all that good stuff, but now I've lost 50. This is not
That's
me,
a
by the way, it's
that's
just
a
an
great
example.
question. No, it's a great question. Like,
Yeah, yeah, you do that, you get
yes.
you're like, "Oh, this is great," and,
Mhm.
you start strutting around, and then 2 weeks later, you go, "What was I strutting around about?" You
Because
get
now I'm
used to it,
terrified. Yeah.
but yeah, but, yeah, so you do that. So knowing that this can potentially happen, that your mind is going to take over to try and protect you.
Right.
I think a lot of people are talking about this. I think more and more people are getting this message, but it's so good to remember because we get pissed at ourselves. I know I do. I get
Hmm. Hmm.
frustrated with myself. Like, what the frick? And I don't wanna go through this pain, you know? I wanna just be celebrating more. So,
Right.
knowing it is gonna help us, right? And knowing that you might be on a roof for 30 minutes in paralysis and then it will pass. And my question is, what's a reasonable time to when you want to sit in your cave? What's a reasonable time to look at that? What? Well, to sit in your cave before you have to fricking pick up the phone and make a
Yep.
call that
Yeah.
changes everything.
So
I need time. I do need like a morning, Martin. So like give us
yeah.
some
So
what's my
give you
time frame?
some sort of time frame that is acceptable.
Yes.
So this is going to be one of those custom to you things, okay? And and the thing is, you're going to have to distinguish between the normal downtime of, you know, we just accomplished this big thing. I, the way I like to think about it is,
Mhm.
you know, when we were younger, we used to do this thing where we go out on New Year's Eve and party it up, right? So coming down from it, right, is you get up super late on January 1st, right? You don't really do anything. That's where a lot of this traditions about not cleaning the house and all that come from, right? Because it's like you needed time to get down from that party.
Right. Right.
And when that begins to, but you know you need to go to work on Jan 2nd, right? So the time that it takes to come down from it should be, you know, probably equivalent to the time that you celebrated.
Oh, interesting.
Because right after that, it becomes something else. You
But
see, you
let
know, like I'm tired from celebrating. I'm tired from like being all like it's one thing and like, oh shit, I really don't want to do anything because I may screw it up. That's an entirely different thing. So it's the conversation shift what makes it the inappropriate time, if you will, right? Like it's
yeah.
the what is it that you're telling yourself that causes that shift in the reason why you're not moving forward.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about celebration and the New Year's Eve example, I completely understand. But celebration is something that people are not good at
Yep.
doing, and
Yep.
it's a vital practice. In fact, I have on my computer here, celebrate me in Pacific
100%.
Perk, like, because I don't celebrate I'm better at it. Some people are like, "Oh, yeah, you're all you say is, 'I'm proud of this, I'm proud of that.'" But anyway, I celebrating the little things. I remember
Yes.
getting on a call with women and they'd be like these big, like, "I sold a franchise," whatever, and I'd be like, "Well, I worked out this morning and didn't drink Diet Pepsi." And everyone would say, like, it's not the big things, it's the little thing. Every
Yep.
little thing needs to be celebrated. So, if you are not good at celebrating and learning that, so your celebration time is very short, I don't know if it's enough coming down time.
It may not be, but here's what
Yeah,
happens, right? What happens is that people are bad at celebrating all things.
all things.
They're bad at celebrating all things. They're not only bad at celebrating some things, which is likely to happen is that if you're bad at celebrating all things, what's going to happen is that once you accomplish something big, you're going to go all out for that one celebration. And the period coming down from it is going to be significantly larger too. But here's what
So
happens.
do you
But
not celebrate big?
you no, you always celebrate everything.
Ok
You see,
okay.
so
Yeah,
if you
gotcha.
stretch out the analogy of like, dodging a bullet, right? Or like not falling down a cliff, right? The brain just went through a scary thing and survived it. Think about people that do this for a living, right? They jump off a cliff for a living, right? They like stunt doubles, people who are like
Yeah.
adrenaline junkies, right? People who live on that kind of constant danger thing.
Mhm.
What they've done, if they've trained their brain to get more comfortable or more used to them taking those little like steps, and they still get scared, but they get scared like this, just a little blip, instead of like terrified,
Oh.
right?
Oh, right.
So it's the
So
exact same thing. So
so
once you accomplish 5 pounds, right, the conversation should be like, I did this, right? The opposite of this could have been like, I just didn't do anything. The
right.
opposite of this could be
Right.
like, I went the other direction, right? And I gained
Right.
5, right? Like that is a moment of celebration. And it's not going to be a block party, right? It's going to be just like an acknowledgement of something accomplished. But people forget, right? So they don't celebrate, don't celebrate, don't celebrate, don't celebrate. And then there's this big thing, and
Right, you're
all of a
right.
sudden there's like this huge party. You tell everybody, right? And then you're terrified right after. But if you're like that kind of the practice that you've established of like, first of all, having a group of people that sort of demand that you celebrate things, that's also good.
Yeah.
And then to be on the lookout for celebration. See, a
Mhm.
lot of what we're going to talk about on how to solve this
Mhm.
is going to be about good planning. It's going to be like, let's say that you have this huge milestone for the end of Q1, right? Instead
Mhm.
of being like, hey guys, let's just go all out. And at the end of Q1, we'll be binarily saying whether we accomplished it or not. And if we did, yay, it's going to be a big celebration. Instead of doing that, you go like, okay, we have this huge goal for Q1. How does it break down per month?
Mhm.
How does it
Mhm.
break down per week? Right?
Mhm.
Such that we
Mhm.
know that if we did the thing you needed to do this week to get you closer to that, you celebrate that. And then celebrate, I mean, you
Right.
acknowledge
A
that it's
shout out,
happening.
acknowledge
You
it. Yeah.
you basically have a conversation with people. This
Mhm.
has to be a real conversation, by the way. It can't be just in your head.
Really? People do that?
People tend to talk to themselves a lot, but it shouldn't. But it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, because in those internal conversations, you're basically trying to win a chess match against a machine, right? There's a chance that you won't, right? But instead, if you actually have a conversation with someone and say, "Hey, I accomplished this week," right, which is a 3.5% of this goal, okay, but I'm 3.5% closer. That is going to not eliminate, but minimize the risk of success paralysis when you hit the big one.
Love it.
I call that shortening the timeline.
Shortening the
Everybody
time.
everybody tends to push the timelines out into the future a little too much, sometimes all the way to homelessness. But they try to push the timelines too far into the future, good and bad, right? So then you start thinking about, okay, end of Q1, right? We're doing this, we're doing that. And then you tend to forget or not look at whatever it takes to do the little steps for there. And
Well,
then,
and it yeah, that's a peace of
professional
mind too. When you
professional procrastinators like myself, right, tend to do this to ourselves a lot, right? There's a lot of stuff that I could be doing for this goal I have before the time of the goal. And I tend to be like, yeah, I'm fine. I have
Okay,
time.
so let's take that for a second. So do you just accept that in yourself and not fight it? Or
I,
do
I,
you
kn-
try and manage it?
I know it in myself, and I try to manage it because I know that I will deal with success paralysis once I hit that. I know I will. Look, I mean, I work with entrepreneurs at all levels. There's people who completely paralyze right after they register an LLC. They haven't done anything yet, right? They haven't sold the thing. They haven't done
But
any,
it
but they
means
register
that
their thing, and it
it
means they're
means that
committed.
it means there's an expectation. It means that they
It
are
means they're
in,
still, yep,
they have to make something happen.
yep.
Am I talking
And
loud? I think I'm very passionate at that
I
moment.
like
So
it.
if I'm
Uh,
screaming in your ear, I apologize.
I like it. But then that's what happens, right? Like they go and they register their LLC or they do their bank account, and after that, it's just sort of like they slow themselves down
Because,
because
for
they've
me,
built it up so much.
well, yeah, and you just go, "Shit, can I do this?"
Yeah,
But that is, and if you go through this process, oh my gosh, 1, you're a high achiever, and 2, you could be an entrepreneur because high achieving people and entrepreneurs and or tend to just keep moving the ball and taking risks in different directions.
right.
And it's the thing I love about myself, and it's the thing that just drives me crazy as well. Because it's like, why don't you just have like there's always something going on in
Yep.
my life that I'm working towards. But like you've told me, I need a challenge or I
Yeah,
get
you
myself
need
in
to give
trouble.
yourself a challenge. But that's the thing, I don't believe that people are born entrepreneurs. I don't subscribe to that.
Everyone
You
is.
I think that everyone is to a degree in one
Yeah.
way or another, and there's uneducated entrepreneurs and there's educated entrepreneurs, right? So I feel like that's the difference. Uh,
Mhm.
by now, you know yourself as somebody who you know always needs the next thing, and you
But
just gotta be
when you say it like that, because it does sound like that, because I kind of think of capitalism or materialism. It's
okay.
I'm not like that, like,
Yeah,
it's not
it's
like
not
about
about the money.
and it's not about happiness as far as, well, I'll be happy when. I mean, I remember in my 20s, if you're in your 20s, like, I remember literally saying in my head, this is what I said. Okay, you ready to laugh? I was about ready to buy my first new car, a Jetta GTI. And I said, if I get this car, I will never complain again.
How
I
that worked out?
literally said that.
Yeah,
So, but it's not about like I'm not enough and I just got to keep moving that bar. It's not that kind of a bar.
no.
It's like, okay, like here's an opportunity. Like I got asked to MC and moderate that panel this fall. And I was like, oh my god, yes, and I'm gonna shit my pants before, I've got time to figure this out, but it's an opportunity. I know I'm stretching myself. I know I have not done this before. I know I can do
Mhm.
it. I know it will be nerve-wracking, and yes, I'm all in.
Sure. Yeah, and that's part of the nature of you, right? And not everybody operates that way, and you knowing that you operate that way makes it available to you to use.
Right, and now
Eh,
my mom finally understands because she's like, "Well, once you get past that or once you get," and I said, "No." No, mom.
eh,
There's always something that I'm working on
right.
so now
Well,
we
the
can laugh.
alternative is people who keep that sort of like when I'm this, I'll be happy thinking, right? Because that happens too. And if you have that kind of thinking, then you tend to build up goals even more so,
Mhm.
right?
And
Like
that becomes unhealthy, I think, when you're in that mentality
well, it
because
just hurts. It
yeah,
just hurts when you do it.
you have to be happy where you're at. And that's where, the gratitudes and the celebrations in the present moment because your happiness is not in the future. I mean, it could be, but you have to be present in the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you and I have a little bit of a different approach to this, right? Like
I
I'm
could totally
like
tell that was coming.
this is how your brain works, right? I don't think it's magic,
I'm
but
the heart, you're the brain.
but here's the thing, right? Like it's not completely unfounded. It's the reason that works, right? The reason, the gratitude, if you will, how you called it, right? Like it's just an
Mhm.
acknowledgement of an accomplished goal, for regardless of how small it is. The way that works for you is you go, hey, it's sort of like an inventory of actions you took that got you here, right? It eventually starts chipping away at that sense of danger that your
Right.
brain constantly tries to bring up, right?
Right.
Everything is dangerous, right? Like
Right.
in the logic of human being, everything feels dangerous, right? Getting into a
Yeah.
relationship is dangerous. Starting a business is dangerous. Trying to sell something is dangerous. I mean, why do you think people like me make so much money on teaching people how to sell, right? Because everybody's terrified of having that phone call where like rejection is at
Mhm.
the other end, like if it's the end of the world, right?
Mhm.
People are
Mhm.
afraid of that, like full on
Mhm.
heart pounding, sweating, afraid of
Mhm.
picking up the phone and having a
Mhm.
conversation with someone that ends in them saying yes or no.
Mhm.
They're terrified of that, right?
Yeah.
And it's because they build them up so much as a goal first,
Mhm.
and then because they don't have any relationship to celebrating the steps that it takes getting there.
And from my heart, there might be some trauma they need to work through.
Oh, for sure. We can always dive into the trauma train for sure. But that's what's happening, right? Like what's happening is they haven't trained that brain into realizing that there's a lot of mini risks that you can be okay with, right?
Right.
If you
Right.
are not training it, right? If you're not training it to how many times a day you dodge the bullet, how many times a day you don't fall down that roof, right? If you're not training it, what's going to happen is when there's a big one, it's going to paralyze you. It's going to be like
Yeah.
really intense in the way it sort of slows everything down,
So
right?
the celebrations
May even make you sick.
oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Celebrate those little celebrations along the way are just your way of telling your brain, "You're safe. We're good. We got this."
Yeah, it's sort of like, you start becoming a little bit of a daredevil, if you will, right? You're becoming somebody who's a little more and more and more comfortable with levels of risk. And again, it doesn't go away. It's just blips, right? You go like right before you do that sales call, you go and you do it, right? It's still there, right? You're still gonna be this little blip of like, what if? What happens if they find out you're a fraud? Right? What happens if they reject you right out?
Yeah,
And
what will they think of me? Yeah, right.
right, but if you think about that, right? All of those little like statements that are being thrown at you by your brain are kind of not they're not as serious as it makes it sound. What if they
Right.
reject you?
Well,
You don't
right,
even know you don't even know them.
right. Exactly.
But
And
but in
most
that
peop
moment occurs like this huge, huge thing, right? Paralyzing to us to a degree. Like we're
yeah,
like, you cannot make the next call.
yeah. And that's why I had to get off our meeting that day, because if I had to do this unthinkable thing right now in the midst of my pain, I had to do it right now, and I didn't wanna hear another word from you, and
That
I just
happens.
had to do it. And you told me,
Go do it.
"Go take action and then go back to your cave."
Yeah, sure. Um, that's another thing that I wanted to make sure that we don't skip over.
Exactly, that's
There's
the time frame, like, I just wanna know, like, how much do I get to be in my
there's a
cave, and then when do I have to s put my big girl pants on and roll on out?
the first thing, and the thing that makes the most sense to me is give yourself a timeline, right?
Yeah, that's
Give
true.
yourself,
Right,
like,
right.
figure out, like, okay, hey, we just sold the first two franchises, right, ever. We've been working at this for 16 years, right, or however long, and there's been blood, sweat, tears, and money thrown at it so that we get to this point. It's no small feat. It's a big one. So, how long are we going to celebrate?
16 years?
Yeah,
No.
let's just match the time it took. So how long are we going to be like in full celebration mode, right? Is it going to be a day? Is it going to be 2 days? Is it going to be 3 days? Is it going to be a week? It's fine if it's a week, right? But say what it is. Call the shot, right? And one right after you call
Mhm.
the shot, if
Let
you're
it
like
go.
finding yourself in day 6, right, not moving forward, then you have crossed over into paralysis. You have crossed over, or potentially you're crossing over into paralysis. And that's when you gotta like find some support, right? You gotta
Yeah,
talk to someone.
yeah,
You're gonna either talk to someone, you gotta like take a small action. That's
yeah,
always that's always a thing to jolt the system, if you will. You're going to take a small action, right?
yeah,
Anything in your list, because you can
yeah,
find a million things in your list. Just grab
right.
one of those things and just take one action. What I find is that most people are able to take one and then the next and the next and the next, and then just get themselves into a little rhythm, and they are out, right? It doesn't take much, but
Mhm,
you have to sort of bridge the gap between like nothing and that first one.
mhm, for sure.
Once you do, you're fine.
Yeah. I
Fine.
like the idea of setting the time frame because you wanna avoid the paralysis of the paralysis,
Mhm.
where you're saying, "Okay, when is this feeling gonna go away? When is this gonna stop? When is this gonna stop?"
Yep.
And that has its own paralysis. So,
Right.
putting something on the shelf for a certain amount of time frame helps you go, "Nope, I'm not coming out of my cave until this day."
Yep. Now, there's another element to this that I think we need to talk about, and you brought it up earlier, which is you call it imposter syndrome. People relate to that, but it's essentially you start questioning the validity of the success that you're. And if you're there, okay, if you're in that place of like, again, you've been working 16 years towards this, you just did it, and now you're questioning its validity, there's a really good chance you may be in paralysis. Right?
Mm,
There's a
mhm,
really good chance that what's showing up
mhm.
is some form of paralysis, right?
So for
And
me, that would be, is this really gonna work?
right, like again,
Mm.
right, recognizing the validity of the success
Mhm.
as questionable, that's a red flag, right? That is something that you got to be
Mhm.
like, I wonder why I'm doing that.
Mhm.
I've been literally working towards this very thing that just happened. Why would I start now questioning its validity? And I
Mhm.
really don't want to get too meta on this in a live stream, but we've talked about a couple times about how like the brain is talking to you. There's something that it's saying constantly, right?
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
There's there's no talking without somebody listening, right? Communication is a two-way thing. So if it's talking, who's listening? And again, I don't want to get too meta on it, but the bottom line is, that there's a dialogue going there, right? Like, so
Mhm.
if it's questioning the validity of your success, you have two choices. You have
Mhm.
a choice to be like, yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, but that's that's not a thing. This is very valid. Or
Mhm.
you can listen
Totally.
to it and engage and start going like, maybe, yeah, maybe it's not as good as I thought it was.
Mhm.
Maybe it's like you have a choice, right?
Mhm.
At that point, the whatever you are has a choice versus the machine that is just programmed to do its job, which is to say challenge, challenge,
Yeah.
challenge, challenge, right? And that's harder, to accomplish, right? To start distinguishing between you thinking and the brain just sort of doing its automatic thing, but it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And another strategy is to take those thoughts and do kind of an elevator with those. Well, what does that mean that
Well,
I'm worried that this is not gonna be successful?
any
Well,
way you can challenge it is good.
yeah, challenging it, yeah, and when you keep working down that elevator, and it's really good to actually have somebody help you with that because you can kinda get stuck yourself. You end up at the bottom of the elevator with a feeling that is ridiculously not true, and there's no backing for that, or it's about self-worth, "Nobody liking me, I don't deserve this," things like that. And then you can ask yourself, "Okay, is that true?" And, work through it that way as well.
Yeah, hopefully you're not answering yourself. Yeah, it is. But
Yeah,
as long
right.
as you can challenge it, there's a couple things that are going to happen, right? If you start challenging those automatic thoughts, what's going to happen is they're going to subside at times,
Mhm, totally.
and then they're going to come back better.
Mhm.
They're going to come back elevated. You see the type of
Better
things
or harder?
harder. They're going to come back harder at you. They're going to come back. It's going to upgrade its system, right? And it's going to start coming at you with like better things, better angle, you know, a more complex thing, so that you stop. Again, the goal of that thing is for you to stop. And it's not because he hates you or anything like that. It's
Right.
because he just doesn't want you to be hurt, right? To have
Mhm,
risk, to be,
mhm,
and what we talk about here is fundamentally, yeah, and people don't help with that perception. It's perceived as super risky,
mhm.
right?
Right.
Any level of or form of entrepreneurship is perceived by the mainstream as super risky.
Mhm,
So risky that you're an entrepreneur. It's so
mhm,
risky that you work for yourself. We
mhm.
all have boomer parents who told us that all we needed to do is get a job from somebody and have them carry the risk.
Right, right. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, and you mean it
Yes, it
you you
learns.
you made a good point about that the corporate world seems like security,
Sure. Yeah.
and it's really not. The corporate
Uh,
world could axe you at any moment, whereas an entrepreneur, you could go down in business or have to pivot, but you're not
You're
0 to
never
0
no, I mean, unless you want to.
unless you
And
want.
and and that's the thing, if the corporate world is not risky, I mean, I wish somebody would ask the 1.3 million people who have been laid off in 2022,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
It's like it's pretty risky to them.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? The challenge is for you to like fundamentally, constantly, every day be engaged in something that is universally accepted as risky,
Mhm,
and for you to train your brain on that risk level is something that you're willingly accepting and willingly participating on, right? You can't let that kind of thinking just sort of get back in your
mhm,
mind as a maybe it is too risky, right? Maybe it is too, like, no,
mhm.
I mean, you don't ride a motorcycle and go like, I wonder if I should be riding this motorcycle, because if you
Yeah.
do, you're likely to
Mhm.
fall.
Yeah, and, you know, going along with entrepreneurship, I mean, it definitely gets better. There's things that would trip me up for hours,
Mhm.
and I might think about it for 3 minutes and
But
then let
you
it go.
get better.
Yeah, yeah,
You get better at it.
right. You as a person get better. So it's
Yeah,
not so
think about it. I mean,
there's
think
so
about it.
many things that are better that I used
That's
to just get so Twitter-pated about. And
and
now
that's the
I
point.
just
That's
So
the point.
that is the good news to
If you were to talk to your 10, 12 year ago version and say, hey, this is what we're getting ready to do right now, you just completely rock her, right? And she wouldn't be able to move just by the sheer size of the thing you're working on right now.
right, right, you're right.
And
Yeah.
that's another way of sort of creating that sense of acknowledgement or the sense of
Mhm,
celebration that you were talking about. It's like if you go, look, a year ago this wasn't possible,
mhm,
and this is what we did, and then we did this, and we did this,
mhm,
and we did this,
mhm.
and it was
Cool.
just wasn't possible.
Right, right. Yeah, it's the saying, "It doesn't get easier, you get better."
Yes, you could
Yeah.
definitely go that way because you are effectively getting better, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
are
So it
somebody who's now more comfortable with risks that you're like completely willingly taking.
yeah, for sure. So that is the good news about success paralysis people. You can exercise that muscle and it does you get better even though things will still come up. So,
Yeah.
absolutely for sure. So, in our attempt to celebrate the little things, Martin, what are
Mhm.
you celebrating
What am I
today?
what am I celebrating today? Let's see.
Today. And I always say today, and I say it like that because it's like it's the little things.
Yeah. Um, you know what? Today I'm celebrating our podcast.
You are?
Yeah,
Tell me why.
I love how we got from idea to execution in about a week, and and I love the way it's going.
Yeah,
I enjoy the conversations that we get into, the people that we see. We have regulars, we have non-regulars, and I really celebrate getting here.
that's awesome. And just like everything else that you challenge yourself with and put it out there, I used to be very nervous Friday mornings, the first and third Friday morning. And now it's like, we got this. We got this, so it just becomes more fun and
Yeah,
real and raw and all that.
yeah.
So, yeah.
What
Um,
about you? What
yeah, for
I mean,
me, I'm celebrating a great trip with my girls to New York City at Christmas time. That was their Christmas present, so
New
just got
York at
back from that.
Christmas.
I'm also celebrating that I'm feeling like I'm in that just getting stuff done mode, and I do love that, but I also know that I'll need some downtime coming up, but I feel like there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of fun things to do, and I'm not exhausted. I'm not emotionally exhausted.
This is good.
Um, Last Friday, I worked 12 hours in my hotel room in New Jersey, and I got so much stuff done, and normally I would be exhausted from that, but it was good work,
Mhm.
and it was fun work, and it was moving that ball forward, and it was fulfilling, and I wasn't exhausted. So it was great.
Got it. Well,
So
so we're almost wrapping up, but I don't want to leave without doing this one. I want to make sure that if you're going through success paralysis as we defined it today, and this is your first time, get that you get something out of this. And the best thing you can do is to talk to someone. Like
right,
literally, that will get you out of success paralysis if you talk to someone. You
right.
go, and there's a very simple structure for it, right? Hey, I just accomplished this. I should be feeling like this, but I'm feeling like this.
Well,
That's it. That's
you
all you
just
have
shit
to
on
share.
yourself. You just shit
That's
on yourself. The
that's all you
should.
have to share, right? You have to share. You have to share what you accomplished, what you should be feeling, and what you are actually feeling, and then let the other person do their job.
What
Most
you
people
think
would be
you
like,
should be feeling. Yeah.
most people would be like, "That's amazing. How did you do that?" Right? And that will be enough to like snap you out of it a little bit. And then for the future is start trying to reduce your timelines a little bit. If you have a big year goal, that's awesome. People should have something that they're working towards, but then split it up. I go, okay, well, monthly, what does that mean? Weekly, what does that mean? Daily, what does that mean? Right? And then if you can just click those off, you will get better. And by the time you hit your yearly goal, or you don't, you will still be better at doing the work necessary for it.
Yeah, totally. 100%. 100%.
All right. What do we have for
All
next time?
right.
It's gonna be a
So,
whole new year.
yeah, it's gonna be a whole new year. Gosh, it's crazy how 2023 how it was for me. But anyway, another day. Little reflection moment there. Okay,
Yeah.
so January 5th, Friday, January 5th, 9 a.m. We'll do our first live stream of the new year. We're gonna have Jen Koken. She comes from the East Coast. She is so much fun. Work and play are one in her mind. When you're juggling, I love this. When you're juggling a tangle of responsibilities or wading your way through a full stop crisis, life can seem so serious. Embracing the ridiculousness of life is what keeps me afloat. Humor and playfulness are what makes me feel less alone and help me get it all done. And I love this because I love the funny in life. She
Mm.
has a great book out that says, When I Die, the title is When I Die, Take My Panties. There's a great story about that. That was a quote from her mother who has passed. But anyway, she's a comedian, she's an author, she is a coach, she's a speaker, she's done TED Talks, she's fabulous, she's super fun. So we'll look forward to that.
All right. Well, we'll see
Yeah.
everyone then.
All right, perfect.
Thank you guys.
Have a great holiday season and know that it doesn't always have to be great. Sometimes this is a really hard time for people.
Yep.
So give yourself that cave time and then talk to people, right? And then try and get out of it as best you can. But
And check in with your people. Check in with the ones who always say they're fine.
right. I know. I hate that answer.
It's a time to check in with those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
see you next year.
All right. Bye.